Millions of years ago, the Earth was locked in a world of ice. Vast glaciers covered the mountains, rivers froze into silence, and the air carried a constant howl of bitter wind. Snow lay heavy on the ground for months, sometimes for years, and only the strongest forms of life could endure such a world. In this harsh landscape, early humans began their struggle for survival. They were not the strongest creatures. Their bodies were fragile, their speed was limited, and compared to the predators of the Ice Age, they seemed almost powerless. Saber-toothed cats hunted with deadly precision, giant cave bears guarded their territories, and towering mammoths roamed like moving fortresses across the frozen plains. But humans had something the others did not. They had intelligence. They could think, they could plan, and above all, they could work together. It was this unity and imagination that allowed them to survive when everything in nature seemed to conspire against them. Food was scarce. Berries and roots buried under snow could only feed so many. Small animals like hares and birds were hunted, but they were never enough to feed entire tribes. As the cold grew harsher, humans turned their eyes toward the greatest source of survival the Ice Age could offer, the mammoth. The mammoth was no ordinary prey. It was a giant, weighing several tons, taller than any man, with tusks long enough to pierce through trees. Its thick fur protected it from the cold, and its size alone made it almost untouchable. To confront such a beast meant risking death, but to avoid it meant starvation. The decision was clear. To live, humans had to find the courage to challenge these giants. But courage alone was not enough. They needed to observe, to learn the mammoth's movements, to understand when it was weak, and to strike only when the odds were in their favor. And so began one of the greatest struggles in history. A fragile species of humans, armed only with stone tools, fire, and unity, preparing to confront a creature that seemed undefeatable. The Ice Age was more than a battle against the cold. It was a test of survival, a trial that demanded every ounce of intelligence and bravery. For those who succeeded, survival meant more than just life. It meant hope, strength, and the first step toward becoming the masters of the earth. The decision to hunt a mammoth was never made lightly. For the tribe, it was a choice between life and death. A single mammoth could feed dozens of people for weeks, provide bones for tools, tusks for weapons, and thick hides for shelter. But to bring one down required extraordinary planning, courage, and sacrifice. The hunt began long before the spears were raised. Scouts were sent out for days, sometimes weeks, tracking the herds. They studied the ground carefully, searching for footprints deep in the snow. A full, grown mammoth left behind craters in the earth with every step. Broken branches, scattered tufts of fur, and frozen dung told the hunters where the herd had passed. They did not seek the strongest mammoth. Instead, they looked for the weak, the old, or the young, for even the bravest hunters knew that challenging the leader of the herd meant certain death. An injured mammoth, separated from the rest, was their only chance. When the scouts returned with news, the tribe gathered in council. Around the fire, the elders spoke in hushed tones, their faces lit by flickering flames. Plans were whispered, strategies drawn in the dirt. Some would circle behind the animal, driving it toward a trap. Others would carry torches, using fire to frighten and confuse it. The strongest hunters prepared their stone, tipped spears, sharpening each one against rock until the edges gleamed. Every man, woman, and child of the tribe had a role. Some prepared strips of rawhide to bind weapons. Others collected branches to build barriers or dug pits in the frozen earth to slow the beast. Even the youngest gathered wood for the great fires that would blaze in the night. For when darkness fell, fire was the only weapon humans had that the mammoth truly feared. The night before the hunt was heavy with silence. The hunters painted their bodies with ash and earth, marking themselves with symbols of courage and protection. The children slept close to their mothers, while the warriors sharpened their spears one last time. The air was filled with tension, a mix of fear and hope, for they all knew that some who left in the morning might never return. And then, at dawn, when the sky turned pale and the frost glistened like glass, the hunters rose. The time had come to face the giant. With steady steps, they followed the tracks that led into the frozen wilderness, hearts pounding, hands tight on their weapons. Ahead of them stood their greatest test, a creature that could crush them in moments. And yet, their only chance of survival. The mammoth stood in the distance, its shadow rising against the white horizon. Steam poured from its nostrils with every breath, drifting like clouds into the frozen air. its tusks curved outward like enormous blades, gleaming pale in the morning light. The ground shook gently beneath its massive feet, each step a reminder of its unstoppable power. The hunters crouched low, their bodies pressed against the snow. Their breaths were shallow, controlled, for they knew that one wrong sound could awaken the beast's rage. Slowly, silently, they spread out across the plain, encircling the mammoth. Some carried torches, their flames struggling against the icy wind. Others gripped stone, tipped spears, knuckles white with tension. The signal came from the leader, a sharp cry that cut through the silence. Suddenly, chaos erupted. From one side, hunters rushed forward, waving torches and shouting, their voices echoing like thunder across the ice. The mammoth reared back in alarm, trumpeting a deafening roar that shook the ground. Snow exploded beneath its hooves as it charged toward the noise, fury blazing in its dark eyes. But this was the trap. From behind, another group of hunters sprang forward, spears flying through the air. Sharp tips pierced thick hide, sinking into muscle. The mammoth bellowed in pain, swinging its tusks like great scythes. One hunter was thrown aside, his body crushed against the earth, but the others pressed on. They circled the beast, never letting it rest, never giving it space. Each time the mammoth turned, a spear struck from another side. Flames crackled, smoke filled the air, and the cries of men mixed with the roars of the giant. Blood steamed as it touched the snow, staining the white ground red. The battle raged for what felt like eternity. The mammoth fought with desperate strength, its massive body shaking the earth with every movement. Yet slowly, exhaustion began to take its toll. Its breaths came heavy, its movements grew slower, and its cries turned from rage into despair. Finally, with one last spear driven deep into its chest, the mammoth let out a thunderous roar that echoed across the valley. It staggered, trembled, and then collapsed with a crash so loud it seemed the earth itself had split apart. Silence followed. Heavy, endless silence, broken only by the sharp breaths of the hunters. For a moment, none moved. They stared at the fallen giant, their faces lit with awe and sorrow. They had conquered the beast, but they had paid the price. One of their own lay still upon the snow, a reminder that every victory in this world came with sacrifice. Then, slowly, the tribe gathered around the mammoth. Hands touched its thick fur, eyes lifted toward the sky in gratitude. They knew this kill meant survival, warmth, food, tools, shelter. The mammoth's life would give life to them all. The beast had fallen. The frozen valley that once shook with its mighty roars now stood silent. For a long moment, the hunters did not speak. Their hearts pounded in their chests, their lungs burned with exhaustion, and their minds struggled to believe what they had accomplished. They had brought down a creature that once seemed untouchable, a mountain of flesh and bone that had ruled the icy plains. Slowly, the silence gave way to voices. Shouts of triumph broke through the cold air, rising into the sky like a prayer. The hunters raised their spears, some bloodied, some broken, but all carried with pride. The women and children of the tribe, who had waited at a safe distance, rushed forward, their eyes wide with awe. For them, this was more than a victory. It was hope. Around the fallen giant, the tribe gathered. The elders stepped forward first, bowing their heads, placing hands upon the mammoth's thick fur. Words of gratitude were whispered. For in this time, survival was sacred, and every life taken from nature demanded respect. They thanked the mammoth spirit, believing that only through honor could the tribe continue to endure. Work began quickly, for the cold would not wait. Sharp stone blades cut through the thick hide, releasing a flood of warmth from within. The hunters carved with precision, separating flesh from bone, saving every part that could serve a purpose. The mammoth was more than food. It was survival itself. Its meat would be roasted over great fires, feeding the tribe for many weeks. Strips would be dried and stored, carried on long journeys through the snow. Its fat would burn in lamps, casting light into the endless dark of winter nights. Its bones would become weapons, needles, and shelters, shaped by clever hands into tools of survival. Its tusks, gleaming and strong, would be carved into spears, ornaments, and symbols of power. And its massive hide, thick and warm, would cover the shelters of the tribe, shielding them from the merciless winds of the Ice Age. As night fell, the valley glowed with fire. Flames leapt high, casting shadows that danced against the snow. Around the fires, the tribe celebrated. They sang, they beat drums made from hide, and they told stories of the great hunt. Children listened with wide eyes as the hunters described their courage, their fear, and the final moment when the giant fell. The fallen mammoth had become more than prey. It was a legend. A reminder of what humans could achieve when they stood together. In a world where nature was stronger than any single man, unity was their greatest weapon. That night, as the stars glittered above the icy plain, the tribe slept with full bellies and warm hearts. They knew tomorrow would bring new struggles, new dangers, and new tests of survival. But for this one night, they had triumphed. And in the memory of the hunt, in the gift of the mammoth, they found the strength to face the endless winter once again. The fires burned low, embers glowing red against the endless dark of the Ice Age night. The tribe slept with warmth in their shelters, their bellies filled, their spirits lifted. Yet the memory of the hunt did not fade. It lived on in their hearts, etched into their stories, carried from one generation to the next. For the humans of this age, the mammoth was more than an animal. It was a symbol of survival, a test set by nature itself. To bring down such a giant required courage, unity, and sacrifice. And each victory proved that humans were more than fragile wanderers. They were becoming masters of their world. Every hunt sharpened their minds. Every struggle taught them new ways to use tools, to set traps, to control fire. The mammoth, in its strength and fury, had forced humans to grow stronger, to think faster, to stand together. It was not only a source of food and shelter, it was a teacher. As generations passed, these lessons shaped the destiny of humankind. The tribes who hunted mammoths learned the power of strategy, the strength of cooperation, and the importance of honoring the life they took. These were the foundations of civilization, built not in cities or temples, but in snowy plains where survival demanded greatness. The mammoths themselves would one day disappear, lost to time and changing Earth. But the memory of the hunts, the courage of those first humans, would never vanish. Their legacy lived on in us, in every step of human progress, in every story of triumph against impossible odds. This was the dawn of humanity's journey, a journey that began with fire, stone, and unity, and with the courage to face a giant. Though the mammoth had fallen, the struggle of life did not end. The Ice Age was relentless. The cold never loosened its grip, and the storms came without warning, burying the land beneath walls of snow. Even with meat stored, hides sewn into warm clothing, and bones crafted into tools, survival was never certain. For the tribes, every day was a new trial. The great hunt had given them food, but it had also taken lives. Families mourned those lost beneath the mammoth's fury, their names whispered in sorrow by the fireside. Yet even grief could not stop the march of time. The tribe had to move forward, always forward. The frozen plains offered no mercy. Hunters still had to rise before dawn, tracking smaller prey like reindeer, bison, or wild horses. Women searched for roots and berries buried beneath layers of frost, their fingers numb, their breaths heavy with cold. Children learned early to carry wood, to shape tools, to master fire. For in this world, even the young had no choice but to fight for survival. And dangers lurked everywhere. Saber-toothed cats prowled the shadows, their golden eyes gleaming in the night. Packs of dire wolves followed from a distance, waiting for weakness, ready to strike at the smallest chance. Even the icy rivers, cracking beneath the weight of men, threatened to swallow lives into their frozen depths. The mammoth hunt had shown the tribe their strength, but it also reminded them of their fragility. They were not rulers of this land. Not yet. They were survivors, walking the edge between life and death, clinging to each other, guided only by firelight and hope. Still, something had changed. Every struggle, every hunt, every storm, every battle with beasts shaped them. It sharpened their minds, hardened their bodies, and bound them closer together. The Ice Age was cruel, but within its cruelty, it forged humans into something new, a species that could not only endure, but adapt. In the endless winter, surrounded by giants and predators, the first humans discovered their true power. Not in strength, not in speed, but in the will to fight on. To survive when survival seemed impossible.